The night sky buzzed with anticipation as the clock ticked toward 10:00 p.m. The stars above seemed almost brighter, as if nature itself sensed something extraordinary stirring in the atmosphere. Across the globe, in countless homes and cafes, on trading floors and online forums, there was a collective tension that could almost be touched. Everyone who had been following the saga of the Iraqi Dinar and Vietnamese Dong revaluation felt it deep in their bones. This might be the night when everything changed. For years, rumors had circulated. For years, whispers of a global reset had ignited hope, debate, and even ridicule. Some believed with unshakable faith that their patience, their risk, and their trust in hidden financial truths would be rewarded with life-changing wealth. Others dismissed the idea entirely, branding it a fantasy designed to prey on the vulnerable and the desperate. And yet, on this particular night, doubt and belief converged in a shared silence, a collective holding of breath as the hour approached. In New York City, a small cafe remained open past its usual closing time. Inside, a group of friends, each clutching worn envelopes and binders filled with Iraqi dinar notes, huddled around a laptop. The glow from the screen illuminated their anxious faces as they scrolled through live chats and streams. One man, George, had invested nearly a decade ago after a friend swore that insiders in Washington knew the revaluation was imminent. His wife had rolled her eyes for years, but tonight she sat beside him, her expression wavering between skepticism and the tiniest spark of hope. "If this is real," George whispered, "everything changes." His friend Michael leaned closer, nodding quickly, as if speaking too loudly might scare the moment away. "I saw the screenshot, man. Banks already updated their internal rates. It's happening." But even as he spoke, his hand trembled against his coffee cup. Half a world away in Dubai, a businessman named Karim refreshed his phone screen over and over, the motion so repetitive his thumb ached. Every few seconds, new messages appeared on Telegram. Asterisk confirmed. Asterisk asterisk rates locked. Asterisk asterisk this is the moment. Asterisk he leaned back in his leather chair, surrounded by skyscrapers glowing in the night, and exhaled shakily. He had invested heavily, perhaps recklessly. Friends had called him foolish, accused him of chasing shadows. But Karim had always trusted his instincts, and those instincts told him to wait. Tonight, as the clock inched closer to the appointed time, he felt both exhilarated and terrified. Would he wake up tomorrow as a man vindicated or a man broken? Meanwhile, in a quiet living room in Texas, a grandmother named Linda sat with her daughter and grandson. Linda had purchased her first bundle of dinar 15 years earlier, encouraged by church friends who swore it was a blessing waiting to unfold. She had hidden the crisp notes in a fireproof safe, praying over them countless times. Her daughter had grown weary of the talk, warning that scammers prey on hope. Yet here they were together, watching the clock on the wall as if it were tied directly to their destiny. Linda's hands clutched her Bible tightly, lips moving in silent prayer. "Lord, if it's your will, let it be tonight," she whispered. Her grandson watched her, too young to understand the weight of the moment but sensing its gravity nonetheless. The tension was not confined to homes and coffee shops. Trading rooms hummed with nervous chatter. Online communities grew chaotic with speculation, screenshots, and claims of inside sources. Some claimed to have spoken to bank tellers who confirmed the new rates were already showing in their systems, but pending public release. Others dismissed these claims as recycled false hopes, yet even the skeptics stayed awake, unwilling to look away just in case. As the minutes ticked down, the world seemed to slow. Every second stretched longer, every breath louder. In London, a retired soldier stared at his stack of notes, the fruits of his savings after years of service. He had been ridiculed for clinging to the idea of revaluation, mocked by colleagues who called it a pipe dream. Tonight, his old battle-scarred hands shook slightly as he waited. "Just once," he muttered under his breath, "just once, let me be right." The digital world mirrored the human one. Chat groups lit up, YouTube streams ran countdowns, and Twitter trended with hashtags like #IQD and #GlobalReset. Hope and doubt intertwined like two threads knotted together, inseparable in their tension. Every rumor seemed both plausible and laughable, every whisper both confirmation and deception. In Tokyo, a young trader named Hana sat in front of 6 screens, each displaying a different financial channel or currency tracker. Her career had taught her skepticism, but her heart had not yet hardened completely. She had bought Vietnamese Dong years ago, just in case, treating it more as a lottery ticket than an investment. Tonight, she was restless, bouncing her leg beneath the desk as she scanned for updates. If it happens, she murmured to herself, I'm free, no more debts, no more scraping by. She allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, a life beyond constant struggle. Everywhere, people carried similar thoughts. Some envisioned new houses, cars, or travel. Others dreamed of paying off debts, helping family, or finally retiring with dignity. The Iraqi Dinar and Vietnamese Dong had become more than currency. They had become vessels of hope, symbols of a better future that seemed forever just out of reach. As the clock inched closer to 10:00 p.m., a stillness fell. George in New York leaned forward, his friends falling silent beside him. Kareem in Dubai froze, eyes fixed on his screen. Linda in Texas squeezed her daughter's hand. The retired soldier in London gripped the arm of his chair. Hana in Tokyo held her breath. Millions of others across the world did the same, and then the clock struck. A chorus of alerts sounded as screens refreshed. Headlines flickered in every direction, some promising triumph, others sowing doubt. But in that very first instant, no one could truly know the truth. All they had was that fragile, intoxicating moment. The heartbeat between rumor and reality, between despair and joy. A moment when the entire financial world, from the humblest home to the grandest city, seemed to pause together, waiting to see if history itself would bend. In that suspended second, it no longer mattered who was right or wrong, whether the revaluation was fact or fantasy. What mattered was the unity of belief, the sheer power of collective hope, the dream that millions dared to hold. Whatever came next, October 6th at 10:00 p.m. would never be forgotten. It would forever be etched in memory as the night the world waited in breathless silence, believing that at any moment life could change forever. At exactly 10:00 p.m., the air around the world seemed to shift, as if the collective weight of millions of hopes had pressed into the moment. Across countless living rooms, phones buzzed and televisions flickered with breaking news banners. Some feeds screamed bold headlines declaring that central banks had officially locked in new exchange rates for the Iraqi Dinar and Vietnamese Dong, numbers flashing across screens like promises of unimaginable wealth. Other outlets, however, dismissed the reports entirely, labeling them as another cruel illusion in a long line of letdowns, a rumor built to bait desperate investors once more. The divide in information was immediate and brutal, leaving people oscillating between triumph and despair. Screens glowed with digits that, if true, would create instant millionaires overnight. Some charts displayed exchange rates climbing higher than even the most optimistic projections, painting pictures of overnight riches and new futures. At the same time, skeptical commentators on financial networks urged caution, warning that without verified confirmation from official sources, these numbers were little more than illusions projected by unreliable channels. The world had fractured into two camps: believers who popped open champagne bottles in exhilaration, and skeptics shaking their heads in bitter resignation. In London, the retired soldier sat alone in his small flat, his pension money tied up in stacks of carefully stored dinar. His hands trembled as he reached for the remote to turn up the volume. The anchor's voice came through, reporting rumors of banks quietly updating their systems in preparation for a public announcement. His chest tightened. Could this be vindication after years of ridicule? He whispered a prayer into the dimly lit room, not even daring to believe fully, but unwilling to surrender to doubt. "Let this be real," he murmured, his eyes glued to the screen as tears welled in his weary eyes. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, a young trader named Hana let out an uncontrollable scream of joy. Her monitors flashed what she believed to be the long-awaited numbers, rates so high they erased years of debt and financial struggle in a single instant. She spun in her chair, knocking over an empty can of coffee as she shouted into her phone, "It's real. I knew it, I knew it. Friends on the other end of the call cheered with her, already planning futures that only hours earlier had seemed out of reach. For her, the numbers weren't just digits. They were freedom from the suffocating weight of loans, late bills, and endless nights working extra hours to scrape by. The divide in reactions was everywhere. In one home, a family jumped up and down, their tears flowing as they hugged each other, imagining a future without financial shackles. In another, a man slammed his fist against the table, disgusted at being duped yet again, furious that hope had once more dangled just close enough to taste before turning bitter. Markets wavered violently in the chaos. Currency tickers jumped, dipped, and climbed again as traders around the world struggled to interpret whether this was reality unfolding or hysteria amplified by social media and speculation. Financial chat rooms erupted into chaos. Messages flew by so fast they became unreadable, streams of exclamation marks and panicked warnings mixing together like white noise. Some users swore they had friends inside banks who confirmed it was real, that rates were being loaded onto internal systems ready to go live. Others claimed they had just called their bank branches only to be laughed at by tellers who knew nothing of it. Screenshots, many blurry or clearly altered, circulated like wildfire, each one dissected and debated with frantic energy. In New York, the cafe that had stayed open late erupted into shouting. George's laptop flashed with numbers, his friends cheering, yet his wife remained still, her face unreadable. "We don't know if it's real," she said, voice firm despite the chaos around her, but George couldn't contain himself. He jumped up, hugging Michael, laughing and crying at the same time. For him, the moment itself was enough, the possibility, however fleeting, that his long wait was finally over. In Dubai, Kareem's phone buzzed nonstop as one Telegram channel, after another, exploded with confirmation messages. His heart raced as he poured himself a glass of whiskey, staring out at the city skyline with wide eyes. Every skyscraper glittered like it was part of his future kingdom, yet beneath his exhilaration was fear. If this was false, he had put too much on the line. His investments were too heavy, his risks too great. The thought pressed on him like a shadow, but he shoved it aside, convincing himself that this time was different. By 10:15 p.m., global television anchors scrambled for updates. Their words rushed and uncertain. Some repeated unverified reports, their voices filled with cautious excitement, while others ridiculed the hysteria. Markets are reacting sharply tonight to unconfirmed reports of a dinar and dong revaluation, one anchor said with practiced calm. But until official statements are made, investors should proceed with extreme caution. Yet for millions of ordinary people watching, caution had long since left the room. They were all in hearts, money, and souls. At banks across the world, tellers fielded frantic phone calls from desperate customers. "Has the revaluation gone through? What's the exchange rate?" callers demanded. Most banks issued the same dry response: "We have no information at this time." But in certain regions, rumors grew that systems had indeed gone offline, that technical updates were underway, fueling speculation that change was imminent. The mystery only deepened, intensifying the split between celebration and disbelief. By half past the hour, some investors had already begun to toast to their new lives, writing resignation letters, sketching out vacation plans, or calling relatives with ecstatic voices. Others sat in silence, staring at screens that showed no official confirmation, the weight of disappointment heavy in their chests. The emotional whiplash was unbearable, yet the frenzy didn't fade, it grew. Every passing minute brought new claims, new screenshots, new videos of people celebrating or crying. It was a global fever, one that transcended borders and languages. A grandmother in Texas clutched her safe, tears running down her face as she thanked God for his blessings, while in Canada, a group of skeptics laughed bitterly, mocking what they saw as yet another cruel scam. The divide was complete, and yet, strangely, both groups were united in the intensity of the night. By 11:00 p.m., no one could say with certainty if history had just been made or if mass hysteria had simply reached its boiling point. Currency tickers still flashed, people still screamed in triumph or despair, but the truth remained hidden behind a fog of rumors and hope. The world sat balanced on a knife's edge, uncertain if it had witnessed the beginning of a new era or the climax of one of the greatest illusions in financial history. The waiting continued, the frenzy deepened, and every heart that had dared to believe beat louder in the unrelenting silence of unanswered questions. As midnight approached, the frenzy showed no sign of slowing. In fact, the storm seemed to grow heavier with every passing minute. Social media platforms surged with energy, exploding with live streams, celebratory posts, and frenzied debates. Some people went live on YouTube and Facebook, popping champagne bottles on camera, laughing with joy, their voices shaking as they shouted, "It's real. It's finally happening." Others, more cautious, streamed from dimly lit rooms, their expressions serious as they urged their audiences not to get swept away. "Don't celebrate yet," one stern man repeated into his webcam. "We've seen this before. Don't let your guard down." Across the United States, local news outlets scrambled to keep up with the global chatter. Clips of people lining up at ATMs surfaced online, even though most withdrawals ended in frustration as machines dispensed nothing more than standard currencies. Rumors swirled that some banks had intentionally gone offline to prepare for rate updates. Screenshots circulated showing systems marked as down for maintenance. Fueling the sense that something monumental was about to break, the tension was unbearable. In Houston, Linda, the grandmother who had held onto her bundles of dinar for over a decade, sat on the edge of her couch with her daughter and grandson. Her Bible lay open on the table beside her, a candle flickering next to it. Her eyes brimmed with tears as her phone continued to light up with messages from her prayer group. "They say it's real, Linda," one message read. "It's confirmed." She clutched her daughter's hand tightly, whispering, "The Lord provides in His time." Her daughter, still skeptical, looked at her mother with a mix of pity and protectiveness, wondering if hope was about to shatter once again. Yet even she couldn't deny the strange weight of the night, the eerie electricity in the air that made her heart race. In Dubai, Kareem poured himself another drink, his hand unsteady as he stared out at the glittering skyline. His phone buzzed endlessly, each message claiming the revaluation was unfolding, that rates were visible internally but still hidden from the public. He paced his living room, running a hand through his hair, caught between exhilaration and dread. He imagined the life that might be waiting for him, control of vast new wealth, the chance to expand his businesses beyond imagination. But then, like a shadow, the fear crept in. What if it was all a mirage? What if tomorrow morning the headlines declared it was just another hoax? His chest tightened with the weight of that possibility. He looked at the clock, 11:32 p.m. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "Show us the truth." In London, the retired soldier sat in silence, the television flickering before him. He had stopped cheering, stopped muttering prayers. Now he simply waited, jaw clenched, his hands resting on his lap. His neighbors could hear the faint sound of reporters talking through his thin walls. He thought of the years he had endured ridicule from those who said he was foolish to invest his pension in fairy tales. Tonight, he felt closer than ever to redemption, but also closer to the edge of despair. He thought of his late wife, how she had laughed gently at him when he first brought the dinar home, saying, "If it happens, I'll eat my hat." He wished she were there now to see whether she would laugh or cry. Meanwhile, the young trader Hana in Tokyo had not stopped shaking since the clock struck 10. Her screens flashed constant streams of numbers, graphs surging upward, chat boxes filled with ecstatic shouts. She had called her parents in Osaka, screaming through tears that she was finally free from her suffocating debt. Her father's voice on the other end was calm but hesitant. "Are you sure, Hana? Be careful." But Hana wasn't listening anymore. In her mind, her future had already transformed. She pictured herself traveling the world, leaving behind the suffocating cycle of exhaustion and bills. She smiled wildly through tears, whispering, "It's over. It's finally over." Yet even in the midst of celebrations, doubt seeped in like cracks in the wall. Financial experts on major networks warned of manipulation, cautioning that no central bank had made any formal announcement. Governments remained silent. The IMF issued no statements. This silence was deafening. For many, it became the fuel of hope. Asterisk, they're holding back, preparing the official reveal. Asterisk, for others, it was the final nail of doubt. Asterisk, if it were real, someone would have spoken by now. Asterisk, by 11:45 p.m., chaos reached its height. In homes around the world, families called one another, shouting in joy or crying in frustration. Some investors rushed to pack their things, planning to head to banks the moment doors opened. Others sat slumped in their chairs, already feeling the bitter sting of disappointment that they had let themselves believe again. Social media continued to split, one half proclaiming history was unfolding, the other calling it mass hysteria. At midnight, the day officially turned over, and yet clarity never came. Banks in certain regions quietly shut down their systems for the night. Some online currency trackers reset without explanation. And yet, there was still no official announcement. For many, the silence was unbearable. In New York, George and his friends sat staring blankly at the laptop that had filled them with joy only an hour earlier. The numbers were still there, but their certainty had drained away. His wife placed a hand on his shoulder, softly saying, "Maybe tomorrow." In Houston, Linda prayed aloud, thanking God for what she believed had finally arrived, even as her daughter remained unconvinced. The candle burned lower, casting shadows across their anxious faces. In Dubai, Kareem collapsed onto his couch, phone buzzing against his chest, eyes wide and sleepless. In London, the soldier whispered to the empty room, "It has to be real, it has to." Hana in Tokyo laughed and cried at the same time, unable to stop herself, even though the numbers flickering on her screens had not been confirmed by anyone who mattered. By the early hours of the morning, one truth became clear. Whether the revaluation was real or just another mirage, the night itself had become something unforgettable. It wasn't only about money anymore. It had become about dreams, about the risks people had taken, the sacrifices they had made, and the unshakable hope that tomorrow might look different from today. Some would wake up crushed, their hopes dashed once again, staring at their bundles of dinar and dong as nothing more than paper. Others would cling to faith, convinced the silence was only a delay, that confirmation was just around the corner. And still, a handful would celebrate regardless, because in their hearts, the dream itself was worth the ride. October 6th at 10:00 p.m. would live on as a night etched in memory, the night millions dared to believe the world could change in an instant. Whether celebration or mirage, it became a story of faith, doubt, and the human hunger for transformation. And though no one knew the truth for certain, everyone who lived through that night would never forget the way their hearts raced, the way hope and fear danced together, and the way, for one fleeting moment, the world seemed to teeter on the edge of something miraculous.